Hot Limit Omaha is heating up here on YouTube Poker as every poker content creator out there is hopping on the bandwagon for the great game. We're back with another PL Oker hand video today after yesterday's massacre with the math. And just a reminder about the Upswing Poker and Jane Nandis PLO course that's out there. Talked about this yesterday, talk about it again, and for the rest of this week, if you sign up with the link in the description below for that course, you're going to get extra bonus material from myself. It'll be some PLO stuff, it'll be some GTO Club related stuff, and it'll be a copy of my book as well. That link's in the description below. Let's get into today's hand. This hand is one of my most something hand. I don't know, it's a special hand in my heart, and you're gonna see why. So when we go through this hand, basically it's gonna be a way to think about a spot when you have a hand like quads against a fun player. So hand starts out, it's gonna be 5,100, and we're at $10,000 effective. Makeup of this table is we have position on a fun player. His name's Lalik79. I think he may have been from Russia. And stats don't necessarily tell you this, but this guy, and we got high stakes PLO legend in the house, Gavs 101, and a couple other guys. Subi87 was a regular. Sick Kid, I think, was kind of like off and on regular, and I am a dumb noob. What a great fucking name. I don't remember much about him though. So I have to admit, I'm recording this for the 4th time because the last time it wasn't recording, and now I'm tilted. We're going to go over this again. Let's get into the hand. Folds around to the small blind. Like I've said this hand so many times. I'm trying not to say so in this spot or in this situation, but I'm going to say it for sure. Folds around to Lalix in the small blind. He makes it 300. We've got ace, queen, king, king. I'm going to introduce a concept for PL Oker hands, which is we do not fold the big blind to a small blind raise under any circumstances. If I catch you folding the big blind to a small blind, I do not want you watching my videos ever again. That's it. I don't want to spend too much time on that. We've got ace, queen, king, king. Our options are call or 3-bet. I think against an action player, against a player that's a bit more fun, playing a bit wider ranges, making some bad decisions post-flop. This is a great hand. I'm going to go ahead 3-bet. I'm going to be 3-betting pretty wide, put some pressure on my opponent, and force my opponent into a uncomfortable position where they're going to be making some pretty big blind per 100 mistakes. I 3-bet to 900. Our opponent goes ahead and makes the call. Flop comes down. King 5-5. King 5. Yahtzee. We got the quad kings. But now you ask, I think a lot of us, we play PLO a lot. We make quads a lot. You get 4 cards. One of the beauties of the game. But then how do we think about a spot like this? How do we think about a hand? What am I supposed to say? I don't even know what I'm supposed to say. How do we think about making quads? Well, I'm hopefully going to be able to give you some enlightenment, some enchanting wisdom for you right now on how to approach it. And I'm trying not to say those words. It's so tough, honestly. It's so tough not to say those words. So Laylis goes ahead and checks. And now I think in a vacuum, probably standard is to check back until you have some more reads on your opponent, until you understand what your opponent's tendencies are going to be, until you understand what your opponent's going to do with what ranges, how often they're going to bluff. I think it's just going to be normal to check back here. Now, obviously, as you had, the more dynamic that builds up, the more you're probably just going to see bet this spot because king 5-5, as we're the 3-better, until we have a check back for the turn, until we have a check back range developed on the flop with our opponent, and then we set up a turn dynamic, and then we set up a river dynamic with those ranges. I'm getting excited. I'm getting ahead of myself. But until you had that in place, just going to want to start the flop and start building your game plans for flops on king 5 when you're the 3-better pre-flop. So check back, things fine. So a way to think about it is that if we do bet here, what are we going to get called by? Well, we do block some of the hands that we're going to get called by. The queens, jacks, tens. Some high card type hands as well with the ace and the queen. We have the ace and the queen, so that blocks some jack combos as well, some tens combo as well. So, yeah, I think I'm going to be looking to get 1 street of value here and sometimes 2 streets of value. I mean, basically you're praying here. You're praying your opponent has something. You're praying your opponent makes a mistake, gets out of line, goes crazy, turns some crazy hand into you're just praying, man. You got quads. You got to say a prayer sometimes. So I go ahead, I check back. Turn is a 2 of spades, and now we got some action. He checks again. I got a decision. I obviously want to make a bet. Now, what hands are we going to get called by? All those same hands on the flop, and obviously now there's going to be some flush draws out there too. We don't have the ace of spades in our hand. We do got the queen of spades in our hand, which is going to take away some of the hands he's going to be check calling here with that do contain just a naked flush draw. So I think I like to go ahead, bet a little bit bigger here. Now you could say 1,200, 1,400, 1,600. Not sure if it matters that much. I guess I like 12, 1,400 a bit more. 1,600, maybe it takes away some potential induce equity on the river, but that might not be true. 1,600 might scare some flush draws away, so then you might even say, well, why don't we bet smaller if we have the queen of spades? Yeah, honestly, I like all the sizes. I like all the options. We got quads. Now you might say, well, can we go wrong? And I think maybe we can go wrong, because when we do make a value hand, we want to be able to get value for it. We want to get paid on it. I think a lot of people out there make hands and then they make quads. They bet and their opponent folds. They're like, oh, I played that. That's all I could do. And sometimes, sure, that's all you can do. Your opponent's just not going to have a hand that he can continue with. But other times, there's going to be some other. You could have done something different. And it's good to at least think about it. Okay, what size? What is 200? What is 400? What is 600? What do all these sizes do here? Just in a vacuum against an opponent that we don't exactly know their tendencies and how they're going to react. Obviously, that changes with every read we have. Well, all that just changes and changes and changes. So, but back to this hand. Lalix checks. We go ahead. We bet 1,400 to 1,800. Lalix check calls. River is an 8, and now things get juicy. So what are we going to do here? What are we thinking? And I've thought about this a lot because I've recorded this thing about 4 or 5 times now. So in the moment, I was thinking, I think this guy probably has a misdraw. Miss flush draw, some weak draw. These guys are crazy. They just check call with the weirdest things. So what can I bet? Or can I bet a size that gets him to potentially induce? Now, in real time, I went ahead. I bet 3,100, about 64% pot. I think maybe my normal size may have been a bit bigger. I think back when this hand took place, there was certainly, it was a bigger bet size, bigger betting patterns going on. And nowadays, it's not that way. You know, people might bet a third pot here as a standard. So, but back in the day, it certainly wasn't that way. So my standard might have been 70, 75%. And even that little bit, that 10% off, that 64%, I think that does leave some space to potentially induce here. So let's assume that we take the inducing out. We just want to get called by a value hand. Well, what size can we bet? So probably going to fold out most of his flush draws. Maybe could have an 8. Might instead a hero call with an 8. Well, what size can we get called by an 8 by? Now, once again, this is just from this situation. This isn't from a balance perspective where, you know, so I guess if we think about that, we got to restart the hand over. But we're just kind of thinking about this spot in this hand against this player who we don't have any real dynamic built up with at this time. So a lot of that stuff doesn't necessarily matter right now. So go to the hand, we say, what can we bet? Let's start 1,200. 1,200, does he call with the 8s, queens, jacks? Yes. I think so. I think all the time calls with that. Does we induce sometimes? I think we do. Okay, well then we go up. So 2,400. We get a call from queens. We get a call from jacks. We get a call from those hands. Maybe. We induce sometimes, sure. Then we start going up and we say, well, I mean, this is kind of an interesting idea, is that the higher we go up, does it make him more or less likely to induce? And how often do they induce? I mean, I don't know. I feel like I might be being very results oriented in that it actually induce him to turn a hand into a bluff tier that he maybe shouldn't have turned a hand into a bluff. But it's always on my mind. It's always something to think about. It's always something to be aware of, even if it doesn't happen that often. But maybe it shouldn't make up so much of a part of your mindset. So you shouldn't be like, well, I think he's going to induce here, so I'm going to bet this size. I'm going to bet really small. And then he just calls with queens. And you're like, oh shit, I probably could have bet bigger. So we don't want to overestimate the amount of times that a smaller bet size might induce some action from our opponent. When you're thinking about this, don't really take that into account. But it is something to consider against certain players. So like I said, I went ahead. I settled on 3,100. I think that's a pretty good size. I think that gets calls. I think that might be right on the borderline in terms of what gets called at a decent frequency by queens, by jacks, by 10s. It might be a bit lower too, but Yeah, it's close. I could see merit for a number of different sizings here once again. I think that's the thing about PLO. There's really no one perfect answer, really. There isn't. It's just a lot dependent on a lot of things. But I go ahead, I bet 3,100, and E-check raises all in. We got quad. Remember, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I'm looking, I'm like $10,000. What am I going to buy with that hook? Nah, I'm kidding. I don't buy that anymore, man. Back in the day, though, whew, I think I went and bought some clothes at Holt Renfrew in Vancouver at this time. So I go ahead, I call. He shows down ace, jack, jack, 6. So, very interesting hand in that. We take a look at his play pre-flop. Most people limp that hand these days. You know we don't fold the 3-bets here at PLO hands. So, folding 3-bet out of the question, I think. But as played, I think flop's fine. Check, check, turn, check, call once again by him. I think that's fine. River does have a bluff catcher, but I don't hate the play. I don't hate it. I think it's kind of creative too. It could also be kind of spewy, but creative plays can also be spewy too. So creative, I think it gets me to fold out. He blocks the ace, which does take away some of the aces combos I'm going to have. So it gets me to fold out some aces, probably very rarely gets me to fold out trip kings. Now, he does block some trip kings with the ace and the jack, some 3-bet combos I'm going to have with kings. So am I going to have king 8, king 5 that often? You know, I don't know, not that much. But when he's got the aces, he's got the ace and the jack, it you know, a little bit percentage of the time, sure. So now, if I fold a king sometimes, I guess it's a good play. I guess it's a good play. And maybe him having the ace and the jack make it a little bit better, because then I'm going to have less trip kings with a high card in my hand. So I might, I guess, fold that less. I don't know how much that matters. I don't know if he would always do this with ace king too. So I don't think our opponent often is going to, I think they probably would do ace king here. Not always king queen, maybe ace king, and then king 8, king 5, king 2 are probably the value hands here. Assuming they don't bet that on the turn. But I think most opponents just bet trip kings here. Especially weaker players, they get excited. They see trip kings. They go, I want to get value from aces. I want to get value from... Because I think most opponents as a standard are going to assume that 3-betters are just going to see bet this flop. And when they check back, they have a hand like aces. They have a hand like queens. They maybe have the total nuts that they want to slow play. And I think a lot of players are going to be like, well, I want to get value from that hand, so I'm going to bet the turn with a strong hand in the opponent's spot. So I'm probably not going to give my opponent much credit here for trip kings, or a full house rather, king 8 or ace king. So I'm probably not folding kings. So I'm going to fold out my bluffs. I might fold queens if I value bet it with this size. I might fold aces if I value bet this size, but I think just without reads, I would probably check call 1, maybe check call 2 straights, and probably just check fold the river here and lay legs a spot until I knew a bit more information to make a better read here. But I don't know, man. He's fucking spewy, but it makes you tough to play against, right? So Laylex check raises. Obviously, I call. I ship the money. I ship the dough. I bring it to my house. I get excited. I had a good night that night, I'm sure. Or this might have been daytime. I don't know, man. I was having some fun. Let's put it like that. So, but yeah, that's it, man. Thanks for tuning in this hand. PLO with Poppy. I just added that on right now. Be back all this week. PLO hands. I love the game. I don't know if you guys can tell, but man, when I talk about this game, there might not be something I love more. Honestly, man, I love Pop Omaha so much. It's just, fuck, man. That's all I got. Peace out.